Welcome back to the 14. This is the Wednesday edition. The SEC tournament is starting tonight. We are very excited. We will talk about that a lot today and give some picks. But first of all, we have a very special guest with us today. I know we have been trying to get this one done for about a week and very excited to have Pat Bradley with us. He, of course, is an SEC Network analyst, also played for Arkansas back in the 1990s. Pat, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, appreciate it. You guys you do great work, very thorough. Learn a lot from what you guys do. It's always good to have somebody. You guys dig deep into the SEC, so it's always good to have that.
Well, thank you. And this time of year, my thoughts turn to just memories of great tournaments past, and I just think some of the SEC's glory days were in the 80s and the 90s, and you were part of that. Arkansas had it going back when you were there with Nolan Richardson, and you had some epic battles with Kentucky, both right before you got there and during that time. I want you to walk me through some of your favorite memories of the SEC tournament when you played at Arkansas.
Well, the first one was 96, and it was my freshman season, and we actually, our first round game, we played South Carolina, and South Carolina at that time was really a good young team. And Melvin Watson and B.J. Mackey, they and us were two young teams, and that winner of that game was going to be able to punch the ticket to the tournament. So it was 96. It was SEC tournament round one. I guess it was Thursday, and we played. We that was it. The winner was going to go to the tournament, and so we ended up winning that game. Actually, I did set the SEC record, 7 threes in the game at the time. It's since been broken. So we beat them Thursday night. Actually, that must have been Friday night. See how old I'm getting. I'm forgetting the days. Then we played against Kentucky, and we got that was the 96 championship Kentucky team with Antoine Delk, all those guys, Ron Mercer, Wayne Turner. So we got dismantled. And then the key is, here's the difference. When you lose in a tournament, the charter flight doesn't leave until the next day. So, like, if you're playing a game, if we were playing just a regular game during the season, we would already have the plane ready immediately after the game. So we'd play the game, hop on the bus, airport, fly home. We never got a chance to enjoy anything. Tournament, though, we got a chance to enjoy it. So you lose, you're able to go out and enjoy it. And that was the days, you fellas remember, where the tournament was every year was in a different city. Freshman year, New Orleans. Sophomore year, Memphis. Junior year was Atlanta. Senior year was Nashville. So that was a treat for us as players, being able to go and hang out. And we didn't do anything crazy, but just kind of, I think it was probably more of a treat for the alumni in my family because they got a chance to during March, they got a chance to go to a different city that they'd never been in and enjoy the food and the hanging out and all that jazz. So it was really a great experience. And then, I guess probably the toughest one was we never won it, lost in the finals again to Kentucky. And then so we lost 3 times to Kentucky, 2 semifinals, 1 finals. And then my sophomore year, again, we were on the bubble, played Georgia, and we lost in the first round in the Pyramid in Memphis to a bogus. You know what the referee did? Bogus move. I'm not joking. 10 seconds left in the game. We call a timeout. We're in the timeout. This is big time now. I mean, we're fighting for our lives. This is tournament time. The official, 10 seconds. We didn't hear his first whistle. He puts the basketball down and starts counting the 5-second call while we're still on the bench. You must have seen this happen in another game. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have. But not in a tournament game like that. So obviously somebody recognized that we sprint out, have no time to run the play. I think we ended up turning it over, and Georgia ends up coming down and hitting a shot at the buzzer to win that game. So I still remember the referee, his name. I won't say it because I don't want anything, untoward words to happen if there's still some Hog fans out there. But he is not, and I repeat, not welcome at Fayetteville.
Now, Pat, you're not saying that an official can decide a game with a bad call, are you? Because we all know that can't happen, right?
A bad call. Like, I get it if it was a bad call, but he decided in an SEC tournament game to blow his, come over and say, hey, fellas, I just blew the whistle. Let's go. Let's get out of this timeout. Let's run the play. I mean, there's 10 seconds left in the game. Like, you got to be a jerk. You have to have a jerk mentality to say to yourself, it's March. They played an entire season. Let me send them a message. Let me be the biggest jerk I can be and put this basketball down. And it wasn't like he put it down. It was on the opposite end of the court. So we had to run the length of the floor as he's counting 1, 2, pick up the ball and go. I mean, you got to be a real, you got to hate your mother, and you got to hate puppies, and you got to hate, to be that kind of a bad human being. Yeah, I said it. He's a bad human being. I hope he found Jesus since then, though. I hope he found Jesus. Because that kind of sin, you go to hell. It's in the Bible.
Pat, you just won over our entire audience.
That's in Leviticus. I think you're correct.
In 7 minutes, Pat just went over our audience. I don't think anything else you say the rest of the way, you're not going to do better than that. I'm just telling you because I see the SEC basketball officiating tweets, and yes, you just won everybody over with that. But I guess, talking about beyond the officiating, let's start with the Hogs, because I think we have talked about it. We would argue they're playing better than anyone in the SEC right now, and I know that's not to take anything away from Alabama. They were 16-2, but Arkansas is on a streak right now, and they are just been so impressive in how they've done it. What have you seen just from this team in terms of going from where they start 2-4 in SEC play? Now they haven't lost an SEC game since January 16th. What for you has just been such the big key for them to have this turnaround?
Well, I think they lost, and you got to remember, they lost. They had 4 losses: Mizzou, Bama, LSU, Tennessee. And when they lost they got drilled by LSU, Bama, and there was a story that recently came out. I wasn't aware that after that Bama game. So I guess it was after the LSU game, they had one of those practices where the weight vests were on, and just Coach Muss absolutely just destroyed them. So then they go to the Tennessee game, and that Alabama game, they get destroyed. Moses Moody is really the only guy that can get any production going. That game, he separated himself as the best player on the team. It was very clear now, okay, we got to get Moses touches. Even if he doesn't shoot it, he's got to be involved in a lot of offense. Then they go to Tennessee, and that was the change. They lose to Tennessee. It was a 1-2 possession game. Had an opportunity to win. They didn't get blown out like they did Mizzou, Florida, Bama. But the difference was they followed the game plan. They got high percentage shots. They were on the same page. You could just tell that this was a different team when it came to understanding their strengths and weaknesses. Guys weren't taking bad shots. Even if they got in the lane, they weren't throwing. There was a game against Missouri. One of the guys for the Hogs went in and tried to make a layup, and he shot it over the backboard. I think, honestly, he shot it. It didn't touch it. It went over the backboard into, the 5th row. That's a bad shot. I get it. It's a layup. But you're not going to make a layup against 2 6'10" guys if you're 6 feet tall. So they whatever it was, Muss took those 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever it was, to get it through their heads. This is how we're going to win. And they bought in. So you credit the coaches and the players. They bought into the game plan on the offensive end. Defensively, they've always been scrappy, tough, athletic, quick. And that was it for me. And then after that Tennessee game, they rolled everybody. And it's just pretty incredible because you don't get this. You guys know. Every fan base out there listening is always asking, well, how can we beat a team by 20 on Tuesday and then lose by 20 on Saturday? It's because of inconsistency. So that's the sheer amazing part of it is they've been so consistent for a month. It's insane. Do you guys realize the first time they dipped their toe into the top 25 was February 15th, number 24. 1 month later, they're in the top 10. Like, that never happens because they never stubbed. They never hit a speed bump or anything. They just locked in. It's like that herd mentality. I think Coach Muss has them like locked in a bunker somewhere, and they're not, so they don't read their headlines. Nobody's patting them on the back. They're just sort of like, just focused. Razorback zombies get focused on winning games, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, poster child for inconsistency in college basketball this year. Loyola Chicago plays Drake back-to-back days on the road, wins the first one 81-54, loses the next one 51-50 in overtime. So that's just how it goes sometimes. But speaking of consistency and pass to the season, Pat, Arkansas and Alabama are the best two teams in the league. I think everybody would agree right now, but they've kind of gotten here opposite ways. Alabama did its work early, was up 3-4 games in league standing, just kind of had to cruise into that title. Arkansas starts 2-4, and as you said, breaks into the top 25 not even a month ago and is just red hot. So two totally opposite paths.
Right.
Now, my question is with Alabama, right? Herb Jones has been banged up a little bit. They played him through some things. With Alabama, I guess my biggest question, and I'm interested to hear your answer here, going into the tournament, and I don't mean just this tournament, but the NCAA tournament as well, is Alabama sort of leveling off, or is this just a team that, in terms of like, it's not blowing people away like it was, or is this just a team that kind of did what it needed to do, is kind of cruised to the finish line, and we're going to see Alabama take it to a different level once tournament play starts? I'm just wondering if we've seen the best of the Tide, and then the last month was just kind of, cruising to the finish line, or is Alabama more the team that we've seen lately? What is your prediction for where this is headed with Alabama?
Well, I thought early on when they started SEC play, and they were playing their best basketball, I thought it was sort of like the knockout punches and the shock and awe of their offense that teams just weren't ready for. And they would come out and just shoot shots that, as a basketball player, you play all your life, and you're like, well, normally teams don't shoot that, so we weren't ready to defend that shot. Catch and shoot, catch and drive, catch and go. There's no hold it, see what's going to happen. And so I thought that there was just a lot of shock from teams early on. And then, but the beautiful thing about Alabama's offense and the strategy is a perfect example is LSU. They play LSU. They just hit them bad. 23 3-pointers. Well, LSU, second time around, says, okay, now we get it. We understand. Watch game tape. We're ready as much as we can be. Well, they defend the three. Well, Alabama makes 25 layups and beat them again. So my point is, I think early on, the approach just shocked teams. They didn't know what to do. Then teams started to figure out, okay, what can we do to slow them down? And they did slow them down, and that's why Alabama was winning. Not their best, but they were still winning. And I think that's the great thing about it. You got two teams. You got Arkansas, who's winning, and they were playing great basketball. Alabama was winning, not playing their best. And that's also very important. and shows what they can do. So, I trust Alabama defensively is long, athletic, quick. They got any huge guys, but they're quick to the boards. So they're athletic enough to go get rebounds. It's just when their offense, when they decide to take those high percentage shots, turn down a contested layup, kick it back out for either a three or another penetration. And so I think they'll be okay, particularly because when you get in the tournament and teams haven't played against you, they don't understand how effectively to slow you down. I think the second time around when teams played Bama, it helped them because they kind of got a little bit more of an idea of what they're going to try to do. That's not going to happen in the tournament, number one. And number two, Bama can beat you. They're happy making 23s or 20 layups. They don't care. Or 30 free throws. And that's a great advantage too. So it's a great system that they run that can beat you multiple ways.
Pat, we've talked about Alabama and Arkansas. If those two aren't the ones we're talking about coming out of Nashville as making the run and potentially playing each other in the championship, who's it going to be? I mean, is it going to be as simple as maybe a team like LSU or Tennessee, or are we looking up and saying, well, Kentucky found its way, Missouri with that experience found their way, or maybe a team like Ole Miss using their defense to kind of make their run here? I know there's lots of options because, as we've said, really outside of Alabama and Arkansas, everyone else has just kind of been up and down in terms of consistency this year.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the issue is the two teams, certainly over the last month and a half, that have been able to win consistently have been those two teams. And Tennessee looks great. Then they have a game they don't look great, and they look great again. That's not going to win you a tournament. If you take a day off, that loses you a tournament. And same for Missouri, same for Florida, same for LSU, and of course Kentucky. You want Kentucky to win 4 games in 4 days against 4 teams. Even Mississippi State has had games where, they early on, obviously, the Dante Allen game, the game where he made a bunch of threes and Coach Cow's. Now everybody was saying Dante Allen, and they had that game won. I think they lost in overtime. So can Kentucky play at that level and beat 4 teams, and then when they get to Friday, you'll have to beat 3 top 25 teams in a row? They haven't done it all year, so you're asking them to do something that they haven't done. That's why, as of now, you have to say the 1 and 2 seed Bama and the Hogs got to be the favorites.
Pat, we both live here in Tennessee. We've just been befuddled by the Vols for a couple of months, and just when we're ready to throw in the towel, they beat Florida, although without Trey Mann, but still, Florida's a good team even without him. I've sort of explained Tennessee's season this way. I don't think that they've got a knockdown three-point shooter like a Chris Lofton that they've had in the past. And I think if you look at the makeup of their team and the leadership, the last few years they've had a Schofield and a Williams kind of inside or on the wings who had that veteran leadership, which have got that with Pons and Fulkerson. But the difference is their guards were juniors and seniors and Turner and Bone and those guys. Now it's Johnson and Springer, who were both freshmen, and Josiah Jordan-James, of course, has never really taken that step up either. To me, when I look at Tennessee, that's part of it. I think it's the dynamic of the backcourt is different. These guys are younger than the guys that led them to their best years under Rick Barnes. And again, the lack of just a knockdown three-point guy every night, which basically a lot of teams in the league don't have that. They get them from different places. But when you go to explain what's happened with Tennessee and how it has missed expectations, is that a pretty good starting point, or do you have another idea here?
Well, I think we know defensively, 90% of the time, they're going to be locked in. And I had a good conversation with Dane Bradshaw about their offense. And they score 3 different ways. The first is the traditional Rick Barnes offense, where you got 5 guys moving, balls moving, setting screens, curls, cuts, fades, just really nice ball, just that five-guy beautiful offense working with each other. Then you have the sort of elbow in block isolation plays. In the past, we've seen Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield. He would give it to those guys on the block or the elbow and let them go to work. And he's tried to do that with Pons and Fulkerson this year. So that's the second way. And then the third way is sort of letting a guy break down the defense, whether it be Bone has done that, Bowden, there's a few guys in the past have been so quick and to be able to break down the defense, get in the teeth of the defense, and make something happen. This year, we've seen Johnson, Springer, and Victor Bailey do it. So that being said, those three ways teams have been able to stop, that traditional five. And then if you don't get the production from Fulkerson or Pons, and Johnson or Springer and Bailey are not, we've seen Springer and Johnson really being able to break down the defense and get to the paint. They've been the most consistent offense. If you only got one of those three things clicking for you, you're going to struggle. And that's why I think Rick Barnman, the answer is not changing anything. What do you change? You have a system. Guys have done it before. We've seen it work. It's just sometimes, as a player, you have to not second guess yourself. You have to understand when I get it here, I've got to be resilient to make that play, or at least try to make that play. So I think it's, again, if they put it together, they can win, obviously, this weekend and then a couple games in the tournament. So It's just a matter of getting guys doing it.
Pat, we'll wrap up with this. I'll get you out of here. You made everybody happy earlier talking about the SEC referees, but now you're going to make a fan base mad because make your pick. Who's winning it this week in Nashville? As we said, I feel like it's right now it's Alabama, Arkansas, and everyone else. But who you got?
Man, and I apologize because I got a lot of great friends that are official. It's not that. It's that one guy. Man, can I go with the Hogs? They got the best player in the league, Moses Moody. Most talented. Herb Jones certainly deserving of his award and what he's done. They might as well. It's a season of first. They haven't won the tournament since 2000, 21 years ago. Imagine the Hogs haven't won it since 21 years ago with Joe Johnson. So maybe a Little Rock guy. Moses Moody is a Little Rock guy. See how I'm putting together the connections here?
I like it.
That makes sense. Pat, we really appreciate it. Like I said, we could talk with you all day. You got a busy week ahead here with the tournament. And before we let you go, I know everyone, watches you on the SEC Network and all that, but you've also got a great new show you're doing, the 30 Minutes of Hell. That's been a lot of fun to watch, listen to. Let everybody know about all that so they can find that as well.
Yeah, you can find it when we do it on Twitter. And actually, I'm doing one with Darrell Walker.
Wow.
Former Arkansas Razorback, doing it today, and former, NBA player, and he currently coaches the Little Rock Trojans in the Sun Belt. So talk to him about some of his NBA days and coaching and all that stuff.
Awesome. Pat, listen, we really appreciate it again. Thanks so much for doing this. Hopefully we get a chance to catch up again before the end of the season. But thanks as always, and we'll talk to you again here soon.
Okay, thanks, fellas. Be good.
Well, that was a fun conversation we had with Pat there. I know we are looking forward to the tournament this week along with everybody else. And with that, let's go through the bracket and maybe make some picks. What do you think?
I think everyone loves picks, and this is the time of year to make picks. And I think that there will be some people that will be upset with us. There may be some people that are not so upset with us, but unfortunately, one team has to win each game, and let's see if we can figure out who that's going to be.
Okay, let's start with the only Wednesday night game, Vanderbilt and Texas A&M. Those teams were supposed to play twice this season. They did not play at all. Texas A&M, of course, was off for about a month, maybe a few days more than that, actually. And the Aggies have come back and played pretty well, losing to Mississippi State and at Arkansas. Actually led Arkansas with under a minute to play. Vandy has been up and down. The Commodores had a nice 2-game stretch where they beat Ole Miss at home, then went to Cincinnati and won that one by 14, where Scottie Pippen went off. And then they go to Ole Miss and look awful. This is an interesting one. A&M kind of more known for its defense. That I don't know that it really translated that way for them this year. Vanderbilt will an offensive team. When the three's falling, the Commodores can beat a lot of teams. How do you break this one down?
Well, that's a great question, because how long have we ever had a situation like this? I'm sure it has at some point. Maybe I'm just not thinking right. But, like, when's the last time two teams played in a conference tournament that didn't play in the regular season? Like, that has to have been a while, right? Because, I mean,
yeah.
I don't even know when it would be. So it's very unique because we don't have anything to go off of from the regular season with these two. I think this is easily the most unpredictable game in the entire tournament. Just because I don't know that we know what we're getting from either team. A&M played well at Arkansas. They didn't look bad against Mississippi State. And then with Vandy, as we've said, there are times where Vandy can look good. There are also times where, you see what happened in the first half of the second half against Ole Miss. And I think that's where I just don't know what to expect. I think for some people, maybe you look at it and say, well, Vandy's playing in Nashville, as we've seen over the years, it's just not and especially this year, like there's just, the atmosphere is not the same. And so I don't know, like, I don't know what to differentiate, how to differentiate these two teams. Like, what is the difference here? Because when you look at it, I think A&M can do some things on defense in terms of forcing turnovers and such that'll make it hard on Vandy. But then on the flip side, I think Vandy could shoot it well enough to win this game. So this is one where just toss up a coin because I don't know exactly who I would favor in this one. I would tend to think that I just was so impressed with the way A&M played at Arkansas. I don't know if they're going to keep that same type of momentum, but I do think someone like Emmanuel Miller with his size and such, without Dylan LeSue, could give Vanderbilt some real problems. Same probably with a guy like Savion Flagg. So if you had to make me pick, I would actually probably pick A&M. But I mean, look, Scottie Pippen's first team All SEC. He's one of the top 5 players in the league. He's good enough to put them on his back and be able to, just be able to will them to a win here. But I think for Vanderbilt, I'm more curious, what does everybody else do around Scottie Pippen? And if they get production out of those guys, they could win. But man, this is just, I don't know. I'd probably pick A&M, but again, that's a 50.1% to whatever, 49.9%. So.
This is total recency bias, but I just didn't like the way Vanderbilt looked at all at Ole Miss, and I really liked the way A&M looked at Arkansas. And maybe that's just Mississippi State was a get your feet wet game, and that was one where, because remember, this team hasn't practiced a lot probably in between. I don't know how many practices Buzz Williams was able to have, but yeah, I think with the Sioux out, I don't know, as good as Pippen's been, Emmanuel Miller's got an argument as best guy on the court too. And the Aggies can just grind you down. I've seen teams in that building have trouble with shooting before. I don't know what it is about that place. Maybe I'm imagining that from the games that I've attended there personally. But I'm with you. I think my gut just tells me A&M here.
Yeah, I'm going with A&M. I think it sets up for an interesting matchup in the next round against Florida, because we've seen this before. Like, we've seen the Wednesday night teams be able to put together a couple wins just based off of the momentum that we always talk about with conference tournaments. So I'm with you. I'm going A&M. I'm not confident about it, but I just think recency bias, like you mentioned, A&M looked really, really good in their last game. Vanderbilt did not. And so I know it's essentially a reset, but I'll go with the Aggies here.
Well, Mississippi State and Kentucky might want a word with you when you say Vandy A&M is the most unpredictable game of the tournament, Blake.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those two did play really, I'd have to say this is probably one of the best games of the league slate this year. They had that double overtime game, 1st of January. Kentucky won at Mississippi State. But, yeah, you don't know what you're getting with either one of these two.
Well, let's dive into it a bit. In the regular season, trying to see if these teams even played. They did. It was
Yeah,
way
the
back
double
on
overtime.
January the 2nd. Yeah, double overtime game. That was State's second game of the season. Kentucky wins that one 78-73. Ken Pom has got this one 2 points in Kentucky's favor. Man, my gut tells me Mississippi State, but it's that Kentucky in the tournament thing that just really nags at me, right?
Yeah, I'm picking Kentucky here. I know that it's and look, we talk about bias. Like, I think this is full bias coming into play here when it comes to trying to separate what we've seen this season from what we've seen in other seasons. I just, for whatever reason, like it's Kentucky in the SEC tournament, and I think until I see them lose a game like this, I'm just not going to be able to pick against them. I don't care that they've only won 8-9 games. I don't care. Like, I just think it's Kentucky in the tournament, and I honestly think that this is going to set up, that really nervous game probably for Alabama fans in the quarterfinals against Kentucky. And I don't know, though. I mean, like we said, you really think about it, like, there are 3 guys on Mississippi State that we could have put, into the conversation for the top 14 players in the league, the top 16 players in the league, whatever. And we mentioned it, like, we wouldn't have put any Kentucky guys on that list. Maybe Isaiah Jackson, but he would have been probably behind the other 3, I would say, at Mississippi State. So that's the difference. Mississippi State, maybe it is one where I think if they get rolling here and they come out and are able to, play well on the defensive side, they could really shut Kentucky down because they're one of the teams in the SEC that can really match up with Kentucky. If you look at Ken Pom, average height, Kentucky's 5th in the country, Mississippi State's 6th. And so I think they have the size and athleticism to be able to counter anything that Kentucky does. So that's where I'm pretty curious to see how this one unfolds, because Mississippi State gets a lot of their points at the rim. They don't really shoot it well from 3-point. I mean, they shoot a good percentage, but they don't need to shoot a lot from outside to be able to win some of these games. We know Kentucky can't really shoot well in that particular area, and they certainly haven't shot well pretty much anywhere other than the free throw line. So I'm still going to lean on Kentucky. I know it's probably one of those, like I said, where if you just do the math and you break it down, Mississippi State's probably the better team overall, at least in terms of, like we said, having 3 guys that we feel like are among the best in the conference. But I don't know. It's Kentucky, SEC tournament. I think Cal will have them ready. This is a reset. I think that's something to really think about here, in that I think this takes a lot of pressure off Kentucky. When's the last time Kentucky's gone to the SEC tournament with zero pressure whatsoever on them? I think this is one where maybe that actually helps them. They're coming in as an underdog in this thing, and I wonder if that's kind of the message that Cal's sending to his team, and if they don't respond pretty well here.
Okay, I'm going to do a hold the phones on you on this for just a minute, okay? Because I want to see, because I think we both lean towards picking Kentucky just because it's Kentucky in the tournament. It's what Cal does, and Kentucky very much had a get-right game before it starts in Nashville. In other words, the last game it played was much better. But the thing that I've said about Kentucky, I just don't see the Cats making a long run in this thing because of foul trouble. And the matchup of bigs is intriguing. I think it's the best matchup of bigs in the league probably. And the issue is State's bigs do a much better job of staying out of foul trouble than Kentucky's. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers on Ken Pom that definitely backs that up. And that's the thing. If you neutralize the bigs and or get Kentucky's out of the game, I think State's guard play is better.
I don't disagree at all. I really don't. Like, I'm telling you, like, I actually think that if you base it on what we've seen, I think Mississippi State is actually the better team here. And I know Kentucky fans probably aren't going to like that because, both teams have been so up and down. But I don't know. Like, it's very appealing in terms of what Mississippi State has. But as we said, though, the problem is with Mississippi State, you don't know what you're getting. Like, they may have 3 of the best players in the conference, but you don't know what you're getting from this team. They scored 51 points at home and lost by 21 to Vanderbilt less than a month ago. They score. I don't know. Like, I can't say that I'm completely confident, even in saying all those things about them, that they're going to be able to come out, because I don't know. We have no idea what Mississippi State's going to do in this setting. I could see them coming out and Kentucky hold them to 50 points and, the Cats win by 15 plus. I could just really see that happening, but This is a tough one. I'm still picking Kentucky. Do you want to pick Mississippi State? I will allow you the Mississippi State pick, but I'm going to move Kentucky on just because I don't know, man. I'm playing the numbers, I guess, from over the years instead of just this year. And for some reason, I think that win against South Carolina for Kentucky, I just think they can build off of this. And I really do think there is something to the fact that they are coming into this thing with no pressure. I really don't think there's any pressure on them, maybe other than just, people who want to see them run the table as Kentucky fans and win the tournament. But this is just a different setting, and I think Cal can use that to his advantage here.
No, I stink at picks. And so I'm going to defer to you for that reason. And then I'm going to blame you if we get this wrong later. How about that?
That's fine. Listen, you're allowed to make a different pick along the way if you want. We'll remember where to go, but if you're strongly feeling the other way, I think you should lean towards it. And as I always say, like I laugh about this when I do the picks posts on the website. Your best bet, if you're listening to this podcast, is to pick against anything I tell you to do. Then you're likely to make some money. So just remember that.
No, my gut tells me Kentucky, too, for whatever that's worth. And I'm looking at Ken Palm. Kentucky is 48 or 47. State's 70. So Ken Palm sees the Wildcats as a better team. I remember Kentucky, the 9-15 record is awful, right? But, I mean, Kentucky just had one string after another of not bad losses, of close losses early in the year to really good teams. I mean, let's rewind this for a minute, okay? And I think these are all going to be close games as I look at them. Richmond, NIT type team, although they lose that by 12. Lose to Kansas on a neutral floor by 3. Lose at Georgia Tech. That was kind of a blowout. That's an NCAA tournament team. Lost to Notre Dame. Can't explain that one. Lost to North Carolina on a neutral floor. Lost to Louisville away. So, yeah, I mean, it's not been a real pretty season for either one, but that's one of these that you feel really stupid if you pick against Kentucky in a game that's one. Maybe it's a coin flip, I guess is a good way to put it.
When's the last time Kentucky lost to a bad team? January the 20th. Every other team they played since then is either in the NCAA tournament or on the bubble, Ole Miss. So that to me maybe is something that I look at and say, gosh, like maybe they're better than we think. Overall, it's just that they have just not had a season where they've been able to win games against good teams. And so that's why I said I think Mississippi State, you could make the argument they are better overall, potentially, just in terms of those individual guys. But if you really think about it, Mississippi State, again, like we said, I don't know if the Vanderbilt game was just a bit of an outlier, but this is also a Mississippi State team that just lost at Auburn. So I feel a little bit better about Kentucky, I think, when I look at it in that perspective of the fact that Kentucky really has just played a lot of good teams here down the stretch, and they've lost some of them as really close games, like you talked about, as sort of the theme of their season. So I feel a little bit better about picking the Cats here.
Okay, next one. We've advanced A&M to play Florida. That'll be on Thursday. That'll be probably starting around 1:30 in the afternoon, I would bet. Any reason to go with the upset here, Blake?
Well, another game with no sample size to speak of from the regular season. I've told you before, and we've talked about this. Florida is just one of those teams where I don't know. Like, could I see the upset here? I honestly think I could, because I really look at Florida, and I mean, Trey Mann we assume is going to be playing, and I don't think there's any reason not to. But, this Florida team, they have those kind of games against South Carolina, Mississippi State. The rest of their losses are against pretty good teams. I mean, again, we're gonna still classify, I think, Kentucky in there. That home loss they had, Florida, that was back in early January, which I don't know how much stock we can put into now, but it's still interesting to me for Florida, because they're one of those teams that, as we've said, I think when Florida's really good, we see what they can do. But they're also one of those teams that I feel like is really hard to look at and say that you feel like they're just going to completely put away their opponent. Because if you go up and down the line for the games that Florida's won this season, they won a lot of close games. Like, the majority of their wins are single-digit, type wins. Now, I know they had the game at Auburn. I think you can throw that out because Sharif Cooper didn't play. That was kind of a last-minute thing. So I don't know about them. Like, they're one that's tricky for me. I'm going to advance them here, but we've said it. The Wednesday night games, the team that maybe gets hot on that night, goes into that next game against a team that's been sitting for several days. I think a Buzz Williams type team could really give Florida fits here. But I'll advance the Gators because they are the better team. But I'm telling you, if we were to see A&M come out and let's say beat Vanderbilt by double digits or something, and you see, Manuel Miller, Savion Flagg, those guys play really well, I think A&M's defense could really give Florida some problems because this is just not an overwhelming offensive team. So I would keep my eye on that as a potential game that's a little bit more interesting because something we do know is this: A&M's fresh, right? They're a fresh team because they haven't played a lot in the past month or so. So I look at that. I don't know if they're going to be able to score enough to beat Florida, but I could see that as our potential rock fight early on of the week because I think A&M could grind that thing out and make it a pretty interesting game.
Well, and the other thing to consider here, too, is Vanderbilt could beat A&M, and I just don't see Vanderbilt matching up very well with Florida. They played twice in the regular season. That didn't go well for Vandy either time. And look, as much as we've been irritated with Florida at times, with Trey Mann on the floor, the Gators really haven't laid a stinker in a while. Now, they did that, losing to South Carolina on February the 3rd, but this has been a team that's played pretty well, Blake. I mean, they lose 72-70 to Missouri a week and a half now. So, well, no, I guess it's been a week. So, I mean, there is that. But I feel like I have a hard time being convinced that Florida doesn't beat whoever they play in this one.
No, that's what I said. I still think Florida wins, but I think it's going to potentially be more interesting than meets the eye if it's A&M because I think A&M plays a style that could really frustrate Florida. And again, we have nothing to go off of because they didn't play in the regular season. So I really believe that. Like, I don't think Florida is just this overwhelmingly dominant offensive team to the point of being able to just run a team out of the gym, which we did see that a couple times. We saw that with the game against Tennessee and those kind of games. But I still don't feel completely that way. I think Florida's got to win a certain way. And I think for A&M, one of the things that Florida's kind of struggled a little bit with this time has been turnovers. And then I look at the way, how Buzz wants to play defense. A&M, which again, sample size, right? They're 14th in the country in turnover percentage defense. So that's something to keep in mind there. Again, I'm not saying that I think the Aggies are going to win, but I do think that could be an interesting matchup if in the scenario that we actually see A&M play pretty well against Vanderbilt and maybe move on there in convincing fashion or something.
Okay, we move to the afternoon session of Thursday's games. 10th seeded Georgia and Missouri. That one scheduled to tip off at 6, so it's not the afternoon session. I guess that would be the night session. But in any case, look, Georgia did beat Missouri when these two teams played. That was in Athens, scoring that one 80-70, that way back on February the 16th. I don't know. I just like Missouri in this situation. I feel like it's an older team. It's a veteran team. It has always seemed to play well when it needs to get one for the most part. Georgia's been so up and down. I just think this is the kind of venue in the situation where I think the edge tilts a little bit more to Missouri than it would otherwise maybe. Maybe I'm making too much of that, but I've seen Missouri come through in the clutch so many times. I just don't see an upset here.
Yeah, the thing is, too, Georgia, for the most part, has really not played well away from home, which, I mean, you could make that sort of same case for Missouri overall, I guess, but they did just get that win at Florida, and they played pretty well in that game, at South Carolina. I know they lost a game at Georgia, but it just seems like Georgia's been a bit of a different team when they're not in Athens. And look, we only have so much to go off of since most games have been true road games. But I guess in a sense, this year, like a lot of games have felt like neutral court type of games. So I think I'm with you. I think Missouri probably is in a good spot here. We've talked about sort of some of the issues with Georgia when it comes to just efficiency on the offensive side, which they're not a great defensive team either. But I think there are just sometimes where they kind of lack some of that maybe a team like Missouri that still, struggles a bit to shoot the ball. I think in that last game they played too, Drew Smith didn't have his best game for Missouri, and I think that was probably one of the reasons why they struggled a bit there. So I'm with you. I think I'm picking Missouri here. I've seen a lot of people actually move Georgia in their brackets and pick them to kind of be the upset pick here. I could see it because, we've seen Georgia put up some points, but I just don't know. I feel like this is one of those games where, I know they played, less than a month ago and Georgia won that game. But I feel like this is a bit of a better spot for Missouri and have a chance for them to kind of bounce back after that loss to LSU.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just feel much better about the Tigers in this one. South Carolina and Ole Miss. I don't know that this one's going to merit a lot of discussion. Carolina's just been so bad. I mean, probably the worst team in the league if you take a snapshot right now for whatever reason. Ole Miss playing with something to prove. I like the way the Rebels looked again when we saw them last time out. Any reason to think Carolina pulls an upset in this one?
Well, the only reason I would say is if Ole Miss, if South Carolina completely makes this their game in terms of just gets up and down the court, it's up and down. I don't know that I love Ole Miss in that scenario, just because these two play completely opposite styles. Ole Miss has slows things down. They play more of a grinded out game with their defense. Whereas South Carolina, they haven't been effective at it, but they really get up and down the floor. What is it? I think they're second now in adjusted tempo in the country. They're 12th in average offensive possession length at 15.1 seconds per possession. So, we know that's it. I think whichever team can sort of force, onto the other the style that they want to play, it's going to really go in their favor. And I just think we've seen Ole Miss be way more effective at that. If you go back to the game actually that these two played, what was it back? I want to say that was about a month ago too. Boy, this was an interesting one. This was your SEC free throw, traditional, just through the roof. As I think there were 73 free throws shot in that game. Ole Miss went 34 of 44. South Carolina went 22 of 29. There were also a combined 39 turnovers in that one. It was not a pretty game, but Devontae Shuler had a huge game, 31 points. And I don't know, hopefully we don't get a game that has 73 free throws and a combined 46 fouls, but I feel like Ole Miss is going to probably be the team to bank on here. And look, here's the thing too. Ole Miss has something to play for. We've talked about that. We talked about with Kermit Davis on Monday. They know the situation. They know they have to win this game. I don't know that necessarily is just going to put so much pressure on them to the point of maybe just laying an egg here. I feel like they're going to come out, take care of business, and be able to advance on to maybe lock up their bid if they can beat LSU. But could we see South Carolina winning this game? Sure, we could. But if you're going to tell me that I should bet on that happening with this team basically beating Georgia twice and Florida once, since they have pretty much, had that long pause. I guess they beat A&M in there too, but that was way back in early January. There's no way you can trust South Carolina in this spot.
Okay, let's move back to the top in the quarterfinals, Kentucky and Alabama. Any case to pick against the Tide? Are you feeling something here that I'm not?
Well, listen, once again, this is historical. And this is what I said. I know Alabama fans. This is what I kept saying. If you're Alabama fans, you want Kentucky to get as far away as they can in the bracket, because the fact is, the last 4 times we've played an SEC tournament all the way through, Kentucky has played Alabama, and Kentucky has won every single one of those games. Now, as I said, pointed this out in my notebook piece I did, those were completely different Kentucky teams, and those were completely different Alabama teams. They have flipped the script. They're now, Alabama is the former Kentucky. Kentucky may be sort of former the Alabama, although a bit of a worse situation in terms of just the actual win-loss record. So, no, I don't think that Alabama will lose this game, but I can't say either that if Kentucky plays well against Mississippi State, it's going to be interesting. I'll say that, because I think and one of the reasons is the double bye. We talked about it. It's a great spot to be, but it's also a potential spot to where it's not always great. We've seen that in mid-major tournaments. We've seen that in the SEC tournament before. I think when you play a team that gets hot, Kentucky got red hot against South Carolina. If they come out and beat Mississippi State by double digits, play really well, then I think you're dealing with a force of momentum there that Alabama doesn't necessarily have, having sat there for 6 days without playing a game. And then I think that's where things get really interesting. But I'm not, it would be one that I think you'll see some people picking this as the big upset, which, again, I'm not going to say that I think is out of the realm of possibility. I don't, but I think we first have to see how Kentucky plays in that game against Mississippi State. But either way, I don't think this is going to be necessarily an easy game for Bama, whether they play Kentucky or Mississippi State. But Bama is just a much better overall team. They are a team that defensively has been one of the best in the country. Even if they don't shoot it great against Kentucky, which I think Kentucky could cause some issues there. We saw Alabama go up, win in Lexington by 20. We saw them beat Kentucky, grind out a win 70-59 at home back at the end of January. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, but Alabama has been so much better that I think they're the pick here.
Yeah, I mean, those two teams played January the 12th in Lexington. Alabama won that by 20 then. You'd have to give me a lot of reasoning to convince me not only it's going to be a 20-point game, but I'm with you. I don't see Alabama stumbling in its first game.
Yeah, I just think, again, that their defense, and Kentucky's not been great offensively. Unless Alabama just has a very poor defensive performance, I don't see Kentucky putting up enough points to be able to hang with them. So,
okay, Florida, Tennessee. I think this would be one of the more interesting games of the tournament.
Yeah, because, we can't really go off of the last game they had because Trey Mann didn't play. And so I think it makes it harder to look at it. And honestly, I don't know how much we can go off of the first game they had, which Florida won by 26 back in mid-January. Because I do think Tennessee, that's kind of where we started to look at Tennessee and said, this team's got some problems on the offensive side. But it's one where I think, we talk about toss-up type games. I feel like this could be one of those just because I don't really know what we're going to get from either. Tennessee defensively, as we've said so many times, is good enough to really, do exactly what they did against Florida in that game they played in Knoxville, several days ago. They're able to kind of shut you down to the point to where even if the offense takes a little while to come along, Tennessee can shut you down enough to be able to catch up. And that's kind of what we saw in that game against Florida. Now, with Trey Mann, if you go back to that first game, Mann, I think he had 12 points. He had like 4 rebounds, 3 assists. So his stat line wasn't completely just off the charts. But Florida got a pretty balanced effort there in that game, whereas Tennessee just could not do anything on offense. Boy, here's a stat for you. I don't know if I even realized this. Tennessee in that game went 12 of 25 from the free throw line, 48%. That is awful. But man, I'll tell you, I think I would pick Tennessee in this game. I don't know that kind of like the others, I don't know that that's a completely confident pick, but I feel like Tennessee maybe found a little bit of something, that little bit of momentum they really had to have after losing at Auburn just by beating Florida, even though Mann wasn't on the floor. I think Tennessee found a little something maybe they can lean on there, and if they can just get that production from John Fulkerson, I think that they can in a game like this. So I will probably take Tennessee to win this game, although this is another one that I think is probably a bit of a toss-up.
Well, let's also not forget where this game is.
Right. There'll be Tennessee
Nashville.
fans there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a fascinating game. I've even entertained the notion of going with Florida to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think the Mann thing really caused some questions. I'm doing a news search. I don't see anything about an update on his migraine, so I presume he's going to play. But I guess this is the time where you start to revisit the idea that Tennessee could be what we thought it was. I don't know that I'm buying it based on the evidence, but Tennessee did have a pretty good resume of wins this year, Blake.
They did, and that's the thing is, as frustrating as we were with them on offense, they've beaten a lot of good teams. Go up and down the line. Like they beat Colorado early in the season. They beat, Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Florida, teams like that. And they lost some close games too. We can't sort of discount that. Where like the game at Ole Miss, if they win that game, that was just 52-50. The game at Auburn, like that's when they shouldn't have lost, but. Those are the kind of games I think that stand out. But then, you look at the others, like the game at LSU and, the game at home against Kentucky, and they've made you rethink expectations for them so many times throughout the year. But I also think that they're one that could actually benefit from having this bit of a break here to have the double bye. Maybe they're one of those teams you feel like it's going to help more just to maybe, work on some things and try to figure out some stuff on offense. So I feel a little bit better about Tennessee, as you could probably tell when I talked about Florida against, potentially A&M or something. But I don't have nothing against Florida. I think the problem is when you make these predictions up front is a lot of it has to do with how teams are playing in the tournament itself. And we just don't know that because we're trying to predict how every game's going to play out. And it's going to be more important, I think, to see how these teams play in their first games, like I said with A&M and then potentially Florida. How do they look in those first games? Are they squeaking by? Are they really dominant? Because that just completely changes your views of how, games once you get to Friday could really play out. So
Missouri and Arkansas. Man, I'm having a hard time betting against Arkansas right now.
Yeah, that's one I just don't. I don't care if it's Missouri. I don't care if it's Georgia. I just don't think in this scenario I could pick against this Arkansas team. But you know what? Maybe they are one that because they're on such a hot streak, maybe they're one that's affected a bit by not playing for, however many days. It would be 6 days at that point. So that's the one thing with Arkansas I would put in the back of my mind if I wanted to try to potentially say, well, maybe they just don't have that edge, but you know what? This team's won 11. They haven't lost an SEC game since January the 16th. And I just don't. I think that they are in a really good spot here. And I just don't think I can pick against them again without knowing what Missouri or Georgia looks like in that game that they're going to play on Thursday. In our picks right now, there's no way I could pick against Arkansas probably in that scenario. Even though, Arkansas and Missouri, they had the overtime game a couple weeks ago. Missouri took care of business against them back in early January, but as we know, that's a completely different Arkansas team now. And so I think the Hogs, they're the pick.
Yeah, I'm with you there. By the way, that game, those teams did play once. That was Arkansas, February the 13th, and the Hogs won that one by 5 in overtime. Ole Miss LSU, boy, this is talk about contrast of styles. Boy.
I don't like the matchup for Ole Miss. I just think that LSU is. I think I would like it better for Ole Miss if we felt a lot better about them offensively. I just think LSU, while not a great defensive team, how many times this season have we really seen LSU just get completely shut down offensively? It hasn't happened a lot. Even in games they've lost, they're still scoring points. And I don't know. I just don't feel great about it, even though I know what could be on the line for Ole Miss. Man, there's just this LSU team, which we have no idea which team's going to show up with LSU sometimes. But I still feel like that they are going to be able to, they have enough guys, even against a really, really good defense. I just feel like they have enough guys to be able to score enough points to win a game like that. And that's another one to where if LSU plays the style they want to play, I just don't think Ole Miss could keep up. LSU won the one meeting they had in the regular season, 75-61 in Oxford. That was back in January. But maybe I'm still just leaning too much on LSU here. But I think that I feel like this is the way the bracket sets up for LSU, I think is as good as potentially they could have asked for. Because I just feel like this is the type of matchup that they would be able to excel in, knowing that even if they're not playing great offensively, they're still going to find a way to score points because they've just got too many guys that can do it. So even if 3 guys aren't playing well, 1 guy could go out and score 30 and still keep them in the game and give them a chance. So I can't say I'm just 95% locked into LSU, but I'm pretty confident that I think this is a good matchup for LSU, at least on paper.
Okay, 2 things here. LSU and Ole Miss played January the 9th, and Ole Miss won that one 75-61. Excuse me, LSU won that one 75-61 in Oxford. And to your point, Alabama held LSU to a season low of 60 points on February the 3rd. I don't think LSU's been below.
They scored 69 in Kentucky.
Cents.
Yeah, they scored 69 in Kentucky. That's the only other point in this season I've seen them score less than. Like you said, they haven't scored below that since. So, they're going to put up points, and I just think that's the issue for Ole Miss. Is I just don't know that I'm still there yet on Ole Miss offensively. Even as good as they are defensively, I don't think they can just completely shut down LSU. Maybe a neutral court setting offers a different result, but I still think LSU is going to find a way to score a lot of points, and I just don't know that I feel as confident that Ole Miss would be able to do that.
Well, Ole Miss, when it wins, it really has to exert itself on the defensive end. And Ole Miss is 30th in the country, 188th in the country in bench minutes, 31%. So they're just kind of middle of the road there. I do wonder about that being a factor. Ole Miss gets after you so hard. are you going to get tired legs in a game late at night, the second half?
Well,
is that one goes down to the wire if it does, right?
I was going to say, and South Carolina is going to play a much higher tempo than LSU would too. So that first game, I think, is going to get you in a situation to where if South Carolina can make it their type of game, there's going to probably be a lot of possessions in a game like that. So I think that's the product too. If you're going from playing one team that really gets up and down the floor to playing another team that is pretty close to them in that same scenario. So I like the way it sets up for LSU. I just feel like it's a good spot for them just based on their offensive firepower.
Well, we've been really creative so far.
Well,
we picked the higher seeded team in every single matchup other than A&M and Vandy, which A&M was the 13th seed by virtue of not enough games. A&M actually had a better winning percentage. So, but these games have been so close this year with a lot of these teams. It's you kind of have to go with who you think is the better team. That's what we've done so far. Alabama, Tennessee. I don't know, man. I've got a hunch about the Vols. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I had a hunch about the Vols too before the season started. I kept calling them a Final Four team. But I can't say that there's anything that's changed my mind to think that they could get back to that point at this point yet. I will say I don't feel great about Alabama because I don't love their path here to get to the championship. As I said, even in a game against Kentucky, I don't love it because I know Kentucky's been bad. And I think Alabama is significantly a better team this season. But we've just seen this too many times where, like I said, some of these teams that have to sit and wait on a Friday, they've earned that double bye, but it doesn't always play out well in the SEC tournament. And you know what? I think if you're Alabama and you were to go out early in the SEC tournament, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world because we have to keep in the back of our minds, too, that we're trying to avoid putting ourselves in a situation to where we don't want to have to forfeit an NCAA tournament game. So I can't say it'd be the worst thing in the world for Alabama. But I am just picking these games based on what I've seen. And what I've seen this season is Alabama and Arkansas are the two far and away best teams, most consistent teams in this league. And that, I think, is the issue you run into when you try to pick upsets before the tournament starts. Because no other team, I think, has been on the same level as Alabama and Arkansas in terms of just overall consistency, which you can say all you want about Alabama's not played well down the stretch. I get it, but still, they've won games. And, that you can't say the same about a team like Tennessee at times. That game at Auburn, really, I think I looked at that game and said, I thought that could be a potential turning point for Tennessee to where if you go out and win a game like that, Sharif Cooper's not playing, and then you go in and beat Florida, then I think my mind changes a little bit. But all I know is that Tennessee struggled to beat a Vanderbilt team without its two best players, lost at Auburn, and then beat a Florida team without its best player. So I don't have enough to go on with Tennessee over these past couple weeks to feel confident in them being able to turn this thing around and score enough points to beat a team like Alabama. So I would pick Alabama. I'm okay with you picking Tennessee because I can't say that I just absolutely could not see it. But I'm basing it on what I've seen overall, and I just think overall, these two teams only played, what was it, once? That was one of the first games. That's January 2nd, so that's when you can probably just kind of throw out. But I just think Alabama's just a better team at this point.
Okay, last time Tennessee won 3 straight games, that was January the 6th through the 16th. Loses to Alabama, then comes out of that, beats Arkansas and Knoxville, and then the next two, Texas A&M and Vandy.
Yeah.
So not a whole lot of track record of consistency there. Meanwhile, for Alabama, we have picked nits about the way it has won recently, but my goodness, the Crimson Tide have been consistent.
They have, and that's the thing is we can say all we want about, well, they should have won by more than that, but you know what? If your biggest problem with the team is that they should have won by more, that still means they're winning. And you know what? Alabama's winning games, and I just don't. Again, we're without seeing how the tournament is played out. Once we get to this game on Saturday, I just don't think I could pick Alabama at this point here as we're talking heading into the tournament. Pick against Alabama heading into this tournament once it starts. So,
okay, so we're going to write Alabama into the final against either Arkansas or LSU.
Ooh.
Oh, that'll be the most fun game of the tournament.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I think this is the one you circle. If we get the matchups we think we're going to get, I think this is the best game of the tournament right here. Because even I'm saying that even without the championship, because I think sometimes when you get to that championship on Sunday, the game quality is not always the best at times. We've seen some good ones, don't get me wrong, but I think that's kind of one of the things you look at and you wonder what the game quality is going to look like. I think this is the game to watch if we get Arkansas and LSU, because that game they played, what was it? That was only like a week and a half ago, maybe almost 2 weeks ago now. At Arkansas, we saw LSU start really, really hot, but then that game just completely flipped because LSU just was bad on defense. Arkansas made one of their crazy runs, all of a sudden got up by 21 in this game. It was just a wild game, but I think that's exactly what you're going to get here. You've got two teams that can put up points and just have some of the best players in the entire conference on both sides. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Because they go back to that game in mid-January. That was before Arkansas started to make their run, but LSU put up 92 on them, and you had LSU's, Big Four. They really contributed a lot in that game, and I think this is just. I'm not, rooting whatever, but like this, I think just on paper, from a matchup standpoint, this would probably be the best game you could get in this tournament outside of Alabama and Arkansas in the championship, if you're just looking at it from an entertainment standpoint. So I don't know, man. This is a tough one to pick because you know how I feel about LSU sometimes. I want to think that they are better than they are on defense, but I think as that game at Arkansas proved, I just don't know that they are. And so, again, Arkansas, Alabama, they've been on a different level. I can't pick against either one of them to not get to the championship here, sitting here making our picks before the tournament starts.
Well, the pick is Arkansas, and this is why, in addition to the fact that Arkansas has won, 8 in a row now.
Right.
I think it's defense. Arkansas is much better. And plus, you look at the matchup the day before, Ole Miss with that 1-3-1 zone. I think LSU advances in that game, but it may advance and just get pushed to the limit. I mean, Kermit Davis is going to give them his best shot. Ole Miss is going to play really hard. And I think late in the game where fatigue could become a factor, Arkansas is better about getting stops, and I think is going to be pushed harder or won't be pushed as hard as LSU will be the day before.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a good point. You can't pick against Arkansas. And look, our minds may change as we go into this. If we're watching it and maybe Arkansas struggles a bit against Missouri and LSU just comes out and just completely, were to win that game against Ole Miss in convincing fashion, maybe we're going into that game on Saturday thinking, oh man, maybe this is actually LSU. This is a great spot for them. But right now, just going on what we've seen in the season, which, sometimes, you just throw all that out when you get to conference tournament play, as we've seen so many times in all tournaments around the country. Throw anything out, because once you get to the conference tournament, all bets are off. But if we're betting right here, right now, we got to go with Arkansas.
By the way, how many conference tournaments have come down to the 1 and the 2 so far?
I can't say there's probably many, has it? Because
what was BYU seeded in the
they were the
WCC?
I think
okay,
so
that's 1, and that's about it. I mean, you're seeing a lot of 6 and 3s and 4 and 5s so far in these mid-major tournaments.
Yeah.
Well, and that's been the fun part about the league. We just talked so many times about how even the bottom level teams can jump up on a night and beat you. There really aren't any awful teams in this league. I mean, South Carolina at the moment, maybe. Vanderbilt from night to night, and A&M, we don't know. But, I mean, you've seen Georgia upset some teams and things like that. That's what makes this so tough. I mean, I guarantee you we're going to be wrong on a few of these games. We just don't know where. Alabama, Arkansas, I mean, these two teams played. It was a 15-point game a couple of weeks ago. Hard to get me off Arkansas at this point.
Well, it's crazy to think, right? These two teams played in the regular season. One game's a 31-point Alabama win. One game's a 15-point Arkansas win. The two best teams in the conference, and this is kind of what you get. But I think it shows you just kind of what both can do. I am sort of with you in that I think Alabama overall, even though we talked about what LSU could potentially bring to the table, and really even Missouri, I feel like maybe I'm discounting what Missouri could do a bit against Arkansas. I really do, because I think that's a team that when they put it together, we've seen what they're capable of. But for some reason, I feel like Alabama has more of the grind to get to this championship game. And I wonder, what that looks like. And again, Alabama's set seeding wise. Like they're not moving, I don't think, beyond the 2.
No.
Like I think
if they get to this place, they're going to be a 2 either way.
Well, and I think if they get to the semifinal, they're going to be a 2 either way. Like I don't think even if they lost to Tennessee, I don't think that does any. I think they're fine. I really do. And maybe I'm looking at that wrong, but I think they are going to be okay as the 2 assuming one of those teams at a 3 line doesn't all of a sudden go and make a run and win the tournament and all this other stuff. But Alabama just has so many good wins. They have too many good wins this season. And I think if they just get past that game in that first round against Kentucky or Mississippi State, I think Bama's going to be fine. So I'm going to go with you here. I'm actually going to pick Arkansas because I just feel like, Muss has had some magic in that building. And I told the story when we first started the podcast about, when Nevada was here, whatever it was, several years ago in Nashville, and they just made that miraculous run by beating, they had comeback wins. I think it was against Texas and then Cincinnati. Muss is jumping up and down, and he's got the magic in Bridgestone for whatever reason. So I'm going to go with you. I'm going to pick Arkansas, and you know what? That's going to make Alabama fans very happy because usually the way it works is if I pick Alabama, they usually lose, and then if I don't pick Alabama, they usually win. So if you're an Alabama fan, don't get upset because this is probably a good thing for you, me picking against you in the championship, because that has just been the trend we've seen over the years. So,
Blake, who was the last team in the SEC to win a game in that building?
Oh, goodness. It's probably Arkansas, right? They played the last game last year.
I was there for it. I think you were too.
There you go. I forgot about that. Wow.
Yes, before COVID canceled the season, and here we are a year later, and it's still
think about that.
Messing with things.
Think about Arkansas was playing in the Wednesday night game last year this time. Now they're our pick to win the tournament. That's something, man. What a job Muss has done with that team.
Yeah. I think they named the right coach of the year, but boy, he had a good argument as number 2. And I think a near unanimous argument as number 2, with apologies to Conzo Martin.
Yeah, no doubt. Those two, because of just how dominant both teams were. Again, Alabama 16-2 in the overall, but, they had a 10-game winning streak. Arkansas had an 11-game winning streak in SEC play. Like, just an outstanding job by both of those. And that's what we said. Like, if we get Alabama and Arkansas in the championship game, I think that's, what else could you expect just based on how these two teams have played? And I think at that point, that would be a very, very fun matchup, just because I think we saw the fireworks involved the last time they played there in Fayetteville with, I think Alabama fans were not happy with how that played out. So that would be a lot of fun if we're getting that game on Sunday.
Well, Blake, we will have everybody covered wall to wall with the SEC tournament. By the way, we haven't forgotten about baseball, and we're ready to hit the ground running when the NCAA tournament starts. If you're an SEC fan and you got your eye on March Madness, you've got to give us a listen and follow our stuff the next few days. Tell folks what you're going to be working on over at southeastern14.com.
Yeah, check everything out there. We got a lot of stuff in the works here. We'll be covering, like you said, the entire SEC tournament. We'll have some notebooks. We'll have all sorts of different kind of features and everything, which clearly my dog is excited about as he starts barking. He's excited. Everyone's excited just for all the games we're going to have here this week at the tournament. So, yeah, check everything out, southeastern14.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, find us on there. Leave us a nice 5-star rating review. That'll help us reach more people. So, yeah, we appreciate all the great feedback and support thus far. Should be a really fun week here with the SEC tournament.
Hey, it's not March if the underdogs aren't making noise already.
That's right. That is right.
I'm going to go tend to mine in a moment, too. Anyway, Blake, thanks for joining me today. We will be back with a Thursday episode of the 14. I think Barry Allen will join us. We'll talk some baseball. Of course, we will talk about the Vanderbilt A&M game, which will be completed, God willing, Wednesday night, so we can talk about that Thursday. We will look ahead to some things related to the SEC and college basketball and whatever else comes our way. Thank you for listening to the 14. We'll see you again on Thursday.